Hello, everybody. I am Kurt Feigl. This year our company celebrates its 60th anniversary. I'm Generation 2, and we've got some third generation family involved. AEG is a great organization for us to participate in. I get the privilege to introduce Premier Smith, who is not a stranger to AEG. I think she's doing an excellent job in some very challenging times. I want to thank her for taking time out of her busy schedule to visit us. We look forward to hearing what she has to say. Let's welcome our Premier.
I feel this is round 2. So I know some of you joined us for an earlier chat, a fireside chat, and I'll have a bit longer conversation with you now. Thanks again to Catherine and everybody at AEG for putting this event on. Glad to be here to spend a little bit of time with you to bring in the Christmas season. And always wonderful to be here, of course, at the historic Calgary Petroleum Club with so many business leaders. I do want to thank AEG for bringing us all together and for your incredible support over the years. AEG has been on my radar for, I feel like it's been 20 years now, the work that you've been doing in providing excellent public policy as well as wonderful networking opportunities. And so you really are leaders. And when you bring forward some of these great ideas, you have great influence on government policy. So I'm looking forward to continuing our collaboration. Your organization and our government share the same fundamental goals, which is to grow Alberta's economy and deliver prosperity for everyone who lives here. And that makes us friends and allies. And I'm glad that we have a chance to share some holiday cheer as things wind down for the year. And my goodness, what a year it's been. If you want to think about where we were a year ago, we still had not seen Donald Trump come into the White House yet. And we were looking at Justin Trudeau potentially leading the Liberals to a total wipeout. I think everybody was thinking that we'd be looking at Pierre Poilievre as the new prime minister. And boy, things really recalibrated and changed over the course of the last several months. So I knew that this job was going to keep me on my toes, but I don't think anyone could have predicted what we saw in 2025. We've lived all of it. We've lived tariffs and trade disruptions and nationwide reflection about how provinces and territories and the federal government all relate to each other and what we want for ourselves collectively. It has been a year of anxiety and uncertainty. There's no denying that. But it is also, as we close the book on this tumultuous year, I think we should all feel more optimism than we have perhaps felt in a long time. With the recent energy accord that Alberta signed with Ottawa, which we announced a few weeks ago, I truly believe we'll look back on 2025 and see it as a turning point in our relationship with the federal government. And since we are looking back, we'll just spare a few moments to think about the last decade and everything that Alberta has faced. We have all had to suffer under the frustration, not to mention the economic fallout of having a federal government in Ottawa working to dismantle our energy industry. And it hasn't even been very subtle. It's been pretty blatant. Let's call it what it was. It was essentially a lost decade for Alberta. And we saw some success during that time. We're Alberta, of course. We're always going to find a way to grow and prosper and find a pathway. But whatever success we'd seen in the last 10 years was earned while fighting the headwinds of bad federal policies. We have calculated that lost decade probably chased out somewhere near $500 billion worth of investment that didn't park itself in Alberta. It went elsewhere around the world, and a lot of it went to the United States. And we can all imagine what our situation would be today if we had had federal support behind us. I've tried to put some numbers around that. Imagine if we had built Energy East and Keystone XL and Northern Gateway. We'd have 2.5 million barrels a day more of production today, which would be the equivalent of about $55 billion worth of GDP that could have been reinvested in not only the new technologies that are being developed, but also in conventional energy sources. So that is what we have missed out on, which is why we certainly do not want to see a repeat of what we've seen over the last 10 years, over the next 10 years. And this energy agreement changes the channel from where we were stuck for 10 tough years. And I think it resets the relationship. It's a new era of collaboration for both of our governments. And we trust that Ottawa is acting in good faith. And we're approaching the agreement in the same spirit. We'll live up to our commitments to engage with Indigenous partners and with industry and to reduce emissions and meet our long-term climate objectives, which we have jointly agreed, stretch out to 2050, which I think is achievable. I can't overstate how good I think that this energy accord is for Alberta. We have a firm commitment that the federal government will back a pipeline to the West Coast. And that means we'll be able to sell bitumen from our oil sands to our growing list of customers overseas. I may take a minute because it is going to continue to plug us into the booming Asian market in ways that we could only dream of before. When you look at the fact that we are now selling product to Asia and China in particular, no one really predicted that when Trans Mountain came about. Everyone was saying, "Oh, well, it's going to feed the refineries on the U.S. coast. Most of that oil is going to go to the U.S." In fact, more than half of it is now going to Asia. And I had a chance to recently meet with the ambassador to Canada from China, who said how surprised he was at how quickly they went from zero up to almost 250,000 barrels a day, and they want more of it. And so and they're not the only ones. Korea as well, they committed with their 3 refineries to buy 1 million barrels a month. And I would say that there's a huge opportunity throughout all of Asia to sell more Alberta oil, and they will buy as much as we can send them. And that means we will no longer have to depend so heavily on one customer. We'll be able to sell our products in more markets and reap the economic security and financial rewards that come from that. And the rewards will be shared. They'll be shared with our Indigenous partners, and we will work along with them right from the beginning. And it will be shared with other Canadian jurisdictions that will benefit from the increased revenues that are brought in and the jobs that it will create and the supply chain that will be built across our entire country. The pipeline commitment is huge, and it's been getting most of the headlines for obvious reasons. But the other parts of the accord are every bit as good for Alberta. We have a commitment from Ottawa to scrap or fundamentally change 7 of the 9 bad laws that have held us back for the last decade. The only 2 that were still outstanding, and we're fighting it out in court. One of these is the declaration of plastics as toxic, and we won first round of that in the federal court, and we'll be continuing along with that challenge with our businesses in that industry. And the other one is the net zero vehicle mandate that was supposed to come into effect as soon as January of 2026. We were supposed to have 20% of the cars in Alberta sold as net zero vehicles, which was never going to be achievable. But that's being challenged in Quebec, and we're also fighting that one out in court. So I suspect with Ford deciding with their F-150s to write down $16.5 billion and not pursue an F-150 electric vehicle, I think that's changed some of the attitudes around what the opportunity might be for that type of zero emissions vehicle. One of the biggest challenges as well we have faced is attracting new investment, despite having an incredible balance sheet and a resource base that can support multi-decade plays. All things being equal, we really should have been a magnet for investment. But as with any commercial venture, it is a long way from a prospectus to a final investment decision. Our vast resources are persuasive, and it's easy for CEOs to see the possibilities that they represent. Vision is, of course, a big part of their job. But to get an investment greenlit, they need to persuade their shareholders and their boards, not to mention their accountants and their finance departments. And whatever they're like at home, the money people don't bring the kind of imagination and vision with them. They want to see the hard facts. They deal in absolutes, red and white, or red and black, dollars and cents, risk and reward. And if they can't see a clear path to getting a project completed or a clear path to profit, even the most intriguing play is going to be a hard pass. And each one of these 9 bad laws added another layer of risk, another element of uncertainty to those calculations. And worse than that, they signaled to prospective investors that their highest government in the land would stand against their efforts and their returns as they had before. If you talk to any of the pipeline companies who had projects that were trying to advance along a very circuitous route for regulatory approval, it's probably in the order of $5 to $10 billion worth of lost investment as those ultimately were not successful. And that means, of course, despite all of the highlights in Alberta's pitch deck, we haven't brought in nearly as much investment as we could have. And I would say not anymore. Losing these bad laws is going to restore certainty and bring in the kind of investment that we should have seen for the last decade. I don't think it's too much of an exaggeration to describe this historic agreement as a major victory for energy in our province. And what's good for Alberta energy is also good for Alberta, and it's also good for Canada. It's going to enable our producers to increase their output, connect us to markets, attract investment, not only to our mighty energy industry, but also to emerging industries as well. And all of that is ahead of us. And that's what our government is going to be focusing on as we welcome in 2026. if everything comes together the way we think it will, is going to shape up to be a very Merry Christmas for this amazing province and an even happier New Year. And I should mention two of the things that I thought were the most important out of that deal were getting the commitment not to implement the emissions cap. We had seen multiple different organizations saying that if you were trying to reach an emissions cap by 2030 or 2035, it would have had to result in shut-in production. The only way to achieve it, if you don't have time to develop the technology, is to stop producing maybe as much as 2.1 million barrels per day by 2035, which would just be devastating for our economy. The other thing was, again, the net zero power regs, and we've already seen the impact of that. You may have seen that a European company has announced that they're intending to make final investment decision on 4 new data centers, and we've also seen that Capital Power has announced a major reinvestment, and they have said that they have confidence in investing in natural gas generation in this province again, now that we have had a carve out on the clean electricity regs. So that also will allow for brand new industry to develop and all of the additional effects that will develop from that as well. So a strong and growing energy industry will mean so much for our province. It will help us deliver the quality of life that Albertans deserve. It will support our investments in healthcare and education and critical infrastructure. It'll enable us to plan for transformative projects like new passenger rail and new cargo rail lines. It'll enable us to have revenues to help invest in our Heritage Savings Trust Fund so that future governments don't have to go into the red and our bottom line is not underwritten by debt. We have already doubled the size of the Heritage Savings Trust Fund just by having a simple change in policy to reinvest the investment income in that fund. And we have a plan to grow it to $250 billion by 2050. So it provides that stabilizer as we continue to see the volatility in resource revenues. It will also create thousands of good jobs and opportunities for Albertans. And of course, it will unleash the rising tide of economic activity that will lift boats in all of our other industries. And that's a pretty nice prospect, I think, for us to think about as we close out such a significant year. It was, of course, significant in other ways as well. We discovered far more energy reserves than we had previously reckoned for. We hired McDaniels to do a reserve study, which I released at CERAWeek in March, that found that we had 1.8 trillion barrels of oil, of which 165 billion barrels are recoverable at today's technology, and 1.36 quadrillion cubic feet of gas, of which about 144 trillion are recoverable at today's technology. Our population, so in total, the value of that is about $9 trillion at today's prices. Our population edged over the 5 million mark, and Alberta builders led the country in housing starts, which is quite remarkable when you think about it, that we're building more housing than Ontario, even though they're several times our size in population. Our biggest city is emerging as a rival for Vancouver for attracting venture capital investment. We continue to see around $700 million a year in new venture capital investment. And according to the latest numbers, Alberta created more than half the total number of jobs in Canada last month. In fact, over the past 3 months, we've been responsible for 80,000 jobs that have been created. Youth unemployment looks like it's finally trending in the right direction too, and thank you all for that. I hadn't mentioned it to the new folks in the room. We do now have a youth employment incentive program to help make it easier for you to get young people on your payroll. We're subsidizing $10 an hour for the first 400 hours of work so that you can train them up on how to brush their hair and show up on time and stay off their phone and make sure that they don't take too many weekends off. But we always feel that if you can give them their first job, then that makes it easier for them to get their second job and their third job and so on. And so we're down to about 13.5% youth unemployment. So if you want to get connected to that program, we'd be grateful to you for it. Careers is going to be managing it for us. The job numbers are also a good note for us to maybe wrap up the year on, because they truly show just what an engine of prosperity and job creation that Alberta businesses truly are. The business community here is a continual source of inspiration for me and has been in the various roles that I've had over the years as a business advocate with AEG, which was my last job before getting into politics again. But even going back to when I was with the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and before that when I was with the Canadian Property Rights Research Institute. I love being an advocate for business because you do inspire us all. The drive to innovate, the growth mindset found here, which is unequal really anywhere else in the world. And it's why we've been such an economic powerhouse over the years and why I'm so confident in our future. This is definitely a time of year for reflection and gratitude. And one thing I am grateful for is having organizations like the Alberta Enterprise Group in our corner, working to drive prosperity and promote collaboration among Alberta businesses. So I do hope you all get some time to unplug a little bit over the holidays, make some memories with some family and some friends. And I hope that we can all come back recharged and ready to take on 2026 like only Albertans can. Our government is certainly going to come back with that spirit. We'll get the pipeline proposal to the finish line. You'll likely see it submitted to the Major Projects Office before July the 1st. We'll make sure Ottawa lives up to their end of the bargain. We've got some deals we need to sign with them to finalize some of the wording in the MOU in the first quarter of next year. And of course, we'll keep on cutting red tape to allow businesses to thrive. And we'll invest where we need to keep the growing province that we have continuing to be strong and prosperous and free. And on behalf of Alberta's government, just want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas, happy holiday season, all the best in 2026, and we'll see you next year.
Thank you, everybody. On behalf of Navicord, my name is Mark Schall, Managing Director and Partner of our office here in Calgary. I'd like to extend our sincere thanks to Premier Smith for joining us this afternoon and for her continued leadership in shaping Alberta's future. For those not familiar with Navicord, we're one of Canada's largest privately held insurance brokerage and risk advisory firms, excuse me, bringing together expertise in personal, commercial, group benefits, retirement, and wealth advisory services for our clients. We're proud to combine local relationships with our national strength to help businesses and individuals protect what matters most. Premier Smith, your comments, your commitment to fostering economic growth and supporting Alberta business aligns very closely with our own mission at Navicord. We deeply appreciate your vision and the work you do to ensure Alberta remains a place of opportunity and resilience. As we wrap up, on behalf of Navicord and our other presenting partners and AEG, I'd like to wish everyone here a very safe and happy holiday season. And again, to Premier Smith, thank you again for being part of this afternoon's event and for all you do to make Alberta such a strong province and the best place to live and work in Canada.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a small gift for Premier Smith and a second for your team.
Okay.
They are you might want to eat everything on your own that's in that bag. It's nice butter tarts. I'm sure it doesn't align with your healthy eating plan, but Merry Christmas.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Yes.